Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really bizarre and honestly highly criticized phenomenon that's happening right above our heads. They're called ghost flights. We are talking about private jets flying all the way across the globe completely empty. No VIPs, no executives, literally zero passengers. Now, at first glance, it sounds like some sort of massive mistake, right? But as we peel back the layers today, you'll see it's actually anything but. So let's dive right in and figure out exactly what is going on in these invisible skies. I mean, seriously, think about it. Why on earth would anyone burn thousands of dollars in jet fuel and create this massive carbon footprint in the process just to fly an empty metal tube across the ocean? It seems totally absurd. And, environmental activists have heavily criticized this practice for obvious reasons. It sounds like terrible business. But the truth is, this isn't a glitch in the matrix. It's a highly calculated move. To understand why, we really need to look at three main layers driving the whole phenomenon. Let's start with Layer 1, aviation rules and logistics. So, before we get into the really shadowy stuff, we have to start with the surface level, kind of mundane systems that keep global aviation running. The primary culprit here is the 80-20 rule. Major, super congested airports like London Heathrow or Dubai, they don't just let anyone land whenever they feel like it. They issue slots, which is basically the right to use the runway at a specific time. And let me tell you, these slots are fiercely protected. It's like holding prime real estate. According to the rules, if an airline or a private jet company doesn't use at least 80% of its reserved time slots, they lose that premium access for the next season. So to protect their real estate at the world's most important airports, companies will literally fly completely empty planes just to hit that 80% quota. Crazy, right? Then we have what the industry calls empty legs or positioning flights. Picture this. A wealthy client charters a jet from Dubai to Paris. They get off in Paris, but that jet's next paying customer is waiting in London. Or maybe the jet just needs to go back to its home base. Well, the plane has to move, so it flies empty, because the incredibly high cost of that initial flight from Dubai to Paris already completely paid for the operational expenses. The company just sends the jet empty to its next destination to keep the whole schedule moving. And this actually illustrates another strict logistical reality. Planes just aren't like cars. You can't just leave them parked in a garage for months on end. Mechanical parts, engines, hydraulic systems, they physically deteriorate if they aren't used regularly. They absolutely need periodic activity to stay healthy. Plus, human pilots have super strict licensing requirements. To keep their certifications active, pilots have to log a very specific number of flight hours every single month. So if there aren't enough paying passengers around, pilots will literally take planes up empty just to maintain their operational readiness and keep their licenses valid. Now you might be wondering, wait a minute, aren't we developing self-flying planes? It's a common misconception that ghost flights are all about autonomous tech. Companies like Reliable Robotics and X-Wing are for sure working on autonomous flight systems for smaller Cessna planes and private jets to cut down on human error and costs. But right now, that tech is mostly being tested in the cargo sector. It hasn't reached standard passenger aviation yet. And more importantly, taking the pilot out of the cockpit doesn't actually solve the legal or economic reasons these empty flights are flying around in the first place. Which brings us to Layer 2, the billionaire tax loophole. Okay, this is where the story shifts from boring logistical challenges into some highly complex financial strategy. Because for a lot of owners, those aviation rules, they're just a convenient cover story. The real game here is international tax evasion and, frankly, accounting gymnastics. If a private jet is classified as a personal luxury item, the owner gets hit with massive income taxes and value-added taxes. It is astronomically expensive to own. But if you take that exact same jet and classify it as a business expense and an operational tool, boom, it transforms into a magical tax write-off. Fuel, maintenance, crew salaries, all of it gets deducted from the company's gross income, drastically lowering the final tax bill. So how do you prove to the government that your luxury jet is actually a hardworking business asset? You fly it, even if it's completely empty. Let me break down exactly how the wealthy play international tax laws. In the US, there's this rule called bonus depreciation. It lets an owner deduct 100% of the jet's purchase price from their taxable income in the very first year. We're talking a multi-million-dollar write-off. But there's a catch. The jet has to be used for business purposes more than 50% of the time. So if an owner takes a few too many personal vacations and drops below that 50% mark, simple. They just schedule a few empty, logistical ghost flights to pad the business stats and secure the tax break. Over in Europe, an imported jet faces a hefty 20% VAT. To dodge this, owners register planes offshore, like in the Isle of Man or Bermuda, and fly them empty between specific spots so the plane legally appears to be in transit, completely escaping the tax. And my personal favorite strategy? The midnight relocation. Some ghost flights happen solely to get the plane out of a specific jurisdiction right before midnight at the end of the financial year, just to dodge that region's property tax. It's wild.
Let's go even deeper. Layer 3, smuggling through the sky.
To really understand the darkest layer of this iceberg, you have to ask yourself a question. What if the plane isn't actually empty? What if it's carrying something super small, incredibly valuable, and completely off the books? Welcome to the gray area of high-value physical asset transportation. To grasp this, you need to know about the FBO, or Fixed Base Operator. You see, private jets don't use the main crowded airport terminals like we do. They use FBOs. These are ultra-exclusive, highly private terminals, and the security and customs checks here, they are drastically more relaxed than standard commercial flights. VIPs can often just walk right through an FBO, carrying millions of dollars in diamonds or luxury watches in their briefcases without ever filing a standard customs declaration. Let's actually walk step by step through how this invisible pipeline works. Step 1. A wealthy individual buys a $10 million diamond. Step 2. They, or maybe a trusted courier, bypass standard customs by casually strolling through an FBO. Step 3. They board a seemingly empty private jet and fly to a free port, think Geneva or Luxembourg. Free ports are basically these ultra-secure transit zones. Step 4. The asset goes straight into a free port vault. Because of the special legal status of these zones, the diamond has never technically entered the country. That means 0 import duties and 0 taxes are paid. The jet essentially flies passenger-free just to move a tiny high-value asset from one loosely regulated zone to another without leaving a single trace in the official customs system. It is basically a perfectly legal heist. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but isn't chartering a jet just for a diamond an incredibly expensive way to travel? Well, let's look at the math. Say a ghost flight costs $50,000 in fuel and crew fees. If that flight is secretly moving a $5 million shipment of jewelry that would normally be hit with a 10% to 30% import duty, that's $500,000 to over $1 million in taxes. Suddenly, that $50,000 flight is an absolute bargain. It's just brilliant economic logic. Spending $50,000 to save $500,000, that is a highly lucrative investment for sure. And we can't forget about the security aspect either. For incredibly rare, one-of-a-kind items, insurance companies have unbelievably strict requirements. Believe it or not, sometimes sending a dedicated, empty private jet just to pick up a tiny package is actually considered safer by insurers than putting it on a commercial cargo flight or using diplomatic mail. The item never even sits in a commercial warehouse. It literally goes straight from the plane steps right into a waiting armored vehicle. Which brings us to our final section, the authorities are watching. Because honestly, this wild west of the skies isn't going unnoticed anymore. The era of completely invisible, unregulated skies might actually be coming to an end. A massive global crackdown is currently underway. Interpol and the Financial Action Task Force, the FATF, are aggressively monitoring these ghost flights. They finally realized that these so-called empty legs are highly effective vehicles for money laundering and moving physical wealth like gold and cash. Because of this, special customs units are now being actively deployed to inspect private jets at luxury hubs like Nice, Zurich, and Dubai. They are specifically looking to intercept this gray market smuggling that happens right under the guise of an empty logistical flight. There's a quote that I think really perfectly captures the core of everything we've looked at today. These jets aren't flying passengers, they are flying numbers on a tax balance sheet. Whether it's to hold on to a prime runway slot, hit a business use quota for a multi-million-dollar tax write-off, or quietly transport a pocket full of diamonds past a relaxed customs checkpoint, ghost flights exist simply because the financial systems we've built actively reward them. So that leaves us with a pretty massive question to ponder today. With environmental outrage growing over the carbon footprint and international financial authorities finally deploying special units to monitor FBOs and empty legs, will these crackdowns actually work? Will they ground the ghost flights for good, or will the people who can afford to fly empty planes simply find a new, invisible way to rewrite the rules? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, guys. Keep your eyes on the skies and never stop questioning what you see.